Okay, Dr. William Curtis here, and I'm doing a quick presentation prior to Thanksgiving because this seems to be a time frame whenever people sort of fall off the wagon when it comes to diet or lifestyle. And a lot of people that are in the Killing Diabetes program have spent a considerable amount of time trying to change habits and to create new ways of eating so that they can reverse type 2 diabetes. So, wherever you are on that spectrum, just understand that this particular conversation is going to be, should be positive. It's not going to be, don't do this, don't do that. It's just going to simply be, let's help you understand and reflect on what the holidays do and how we behave during those holiday times. I call it holiday norms or cultural norms of the holidays. And what happens is if you're looking at this, you'll notice that your behavior is often very different when it comes to food during the holidays. It's a habit. It's a series of cues and behaviors that go on that become a conditioned response. And so it's kind of interesting how when we get into this environment of Thanksgiving and Christmas and these new ways of eating, the same cues will trigger us year after year. Sometimes it's the stress of being around family we haven't been around for a while. Sometimes it's all the foods that we normally don't eat on a regular basis, but they're in front of us, that festivity type environment. And then what happens is we have this conditioned response that we sort of gorge or, go all out on foods we would never normally eat. And this is the thing I wanted to be, have the folks in the diabetic program sort of understand is that there are these cultural norms that you're going to be cued and triggered. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just a lot of, we are culturally taught these things over a period of time, over our entire lives. And so it becomes a cultural norm that when we get to the holidays, we can completely derail and go off on another dietary plan. And one of the things to keep in mind though, is it's a festivity time. It's a feast time. It's a seasonal thing. So it's okay to do things a little differently than we normally would do. What I will encourage as we go through this is I want to make sure that we're being aware of the things that definitely hurt us or the things that make us feel badly when we eat them. And for those that just came in a little late, I just started, but we were kind of introducing this idea of holiday norms and sort of cultural changes that occur and around these times of the year that kind of sometimes can really challenge us dietarily speaking. One of the terms I want to bring up, and it's about this concept of being mindful. I did mention it a little bit in the Killing Diabetes course, but it's an idea of being more conscious of the way we eat. Now that's good year round. That doesn't have to be just during the holidays, but it's very important to be very mindful of the way we eat. It's one of when you look at some of the behavioral programs for weight loss, some of the things that they do have nothing to do with what you're actually eating. They actually are pretty loose as far as what your dietary plan is. But what they do is they try to get you more aware of what you're eating. I've seen it. I saw a study that showed you can take a photo of every meal you eat and you'll lose weight. It doesn't matter what you eat. You just take a photo of what you eat. And apparently the study showed that people lose weight. That sort of speaks to the behavioral aspect of eating and how we can eat and be unaware of what we're doing. And you take a photo, you kind of look at it and go, wow, am I really gonna eat that? Sorry, I'm ringing here. And so that's one of those things that just being aware and looking at and observing what you're actually eating sometimes allows you enough time to pump the brakes and say, I don't think I'm gonna eat quite as much of that millionaire pie there. I think I'm going to go ahead and steer clear of that. Or maybe, oh, I didn't realize I had so much starch on that plate when I really want to emphasize my good fats and my proteins, maybe some vegetables. I think I'm just going to not eat that. It's a matter of being a little bit more mindful. So mindfulness is good for a lot of things. And as you go into the holidays, I want you to go into the gathering and look and witness. That's part of the mindfulness is witness how you feel in that environment. Witness the things that you're drawn to. I call those cues from a habit formation, the things that you're drawn to, the things that you're feeling blocks or negative about. Look at those things. Make sure that you're observing them and try to understand where those come from. And also maybe part of that mindfulness is how does the food make you feel? because that's fine if you want to crush, the pumpkin pie and do whatever. If that's what you're going to do, that's what you feel you want to do, then also observe how you feel when you eat those foods. Because for a lot of you that have been really trying to tighten your diabetic control and things like that, and I know some in this have had great success with that. One of the things that people get to the point of is they don't want to eat foods that make them feel bad. And that's something that I think a lot of people ignore that are really on that roller coaster with diabetes, is they're just eating stuff that they don't realize that's why they feel bad. It's because of those foods that they're consuming. And so also, how do you feel around the people around you? How, what behaviors do you see? How do they eat differently? You know, um, so I think that there's several healthy things you can focus on as we go into the holidays. And, first would be your emotions that you experience. Are you down? Are you around family that are making you feel negative? Are you in environments where the dynamics of relationships make you feel a certain way? I have an in-law that every time I go there, they, for years, the first 20 years of my marriage, it was always, if I don't eat the millionaire pie, there's something wrong with me and something wrong with my relationship with my in-law. That was like, why won't you eat this pie? And I didn't realize it was a cultural condition thing. That was a family recipe that was passed down and passed down and passed down. And everyone was supposed to sit around, watch the football game, and the women in the house bring you the big pie of, millionaire's pie, and you're supposed to eat it and be happy about it. And I remember somewhere in the middle of, 10, 15 years into my marriage, I thought, I don't want to eat that. I mean, it's not because it doesn't taste good. It's just, I don't want that much sugar. I feel bad when I eat it. It's not because it's not because but they see that as like, you don't love if you don't consume this meal. And I think man, if anything you do going through this holiday season, look at how your emotions are tied to what you're consuming. And at some point I just had to have it out and say, look, it's not because I don't love you and I give you a big hug. It's like, I just don't want to eat that. It's because I don't feel good when I eat that. It's not because I don't love you or I don't want you. I don't care about the time you spent preparing that from the ancient family recipe. So it's like, I know, it's kind of tongue in cheek how I'm telling that story, but really it is true. And you will see that, like, here's the big bowl of that we always eat. And it's the big meal. We all have these norms. So reflect about how that makes you feel, how the food makes you feel, think about your relationships. And I think it's healthy to go into this window less about what the food is going to be like, or I've got to avoid, or I can't eat what I want. All those, don't go into the holidays that way. Go in with the idea that you're going to uplift, you're going to share fellowship with everyone. Go in with that kind of loving attitude that you're there for the relationships and that you're there maybe also for the highest quality food you can get. Think about the quality of what you can eat. I think sometimes we get too focused on what we can't eat. And it's not that you can't, you can eat it if you want. If you do, just observe how you feel. I've always told you in this class that perfection is not the goal. Some people need a tighter diet than others, or their diabetes explodes on them. And some people eat certain foods, it makes them feel bad and they shouldn't eat them. But I'm not telling you not to do that, especially during a festivity time, if that's what you want to do. But you need to be very conscious of it. The other things that can be very positive in this time frame that are good steps to do, if you're approaching, these holiday seasons and that diet might be a little, less tight than you've been in the past, be physically active. I encourage you, get up first thing in the morning, go for a long walk or a run, go do something for exercise, pump iron, whatever you want to do. Do it first thing in the morning, crush it early in the day, so that what happens is the day goes on, you have that in the bank. You've got a little caloric deficit, a little bit of energetic deficit. But if you want to splurge a little bit, I think I mentioned this in the class, if you exercise intently and then eat something that has, some kind of simple sugar in it, you don't require as much insulin to absorb that. So the reality is it's kind of a hack for, if you do intense exercise and then you come and have your big meal, you're not going to spike your insulin as much. You're probably not going to see the same spike in your blood sugars as you normally would, if you just went in cold. Keep high sugar and starches to a minimum if you can. I mean, there's tons of things you can typically eat at a family gathering that don't require, tons of sugar, and if you want a taste of a dessert, there's cheesecakes, there's pumpkin pies. Some of these things are lower in sugar than others. And I would encourage you to try to stick with those or keep your portions small, because we don't want you to feel sick. If you've been staying away from carbs and sugar for a long time, or if you have very rigid diabetic control, the issue can, it can spike your sugar quite a bit if you do something more than you've typically done in the past. And I know we just had one come in. I'm recording this, so if you miss part of it, just be aware you'll be able to go back and watch it later. Also, again, I mentioned the focusing on the quality of foods. I think that's something I like to do. I like to, like, a little bit of a food snob, that I'm like, what's the best thing here? What's the, maybe that turkey, I want the perfect piece, and I want the perfect slice of this. And, and I'm going to try to just minimize the starches and have that attitude going into the meal. And I think you'll be looking for the best of that, not so much the quantity. I think there's a real tendency on Thanksgiving, especially, to have this like huge, massive meal, and then you sit around bloated and feeling, sour all day long, and antacids or whatever. And it's because it's this attitude of, we're going to eat a lot of it. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a high quality, and focus on that. I think it's also one other thing on the mindfulness topic I want to cycle back to. Think of your own emotions and the things you tell yourself. I've been picking up a lot on that from some of my patients lately. There's a lot of self-talk that goes on around food, and there's no reason for that during the holidays. If you don't have to say, gosh, I'm so weak, I'm craving this, whatever. You don't have to go to that level as far as, your own attitude and how you self-talk yourself. Be positive with yourself. Like I said, perfection's not the goal. One other thing that I think is good, don't be that guy. What I mean by that is, oh, I can't eat that, and that's not on my diet. Or don't like shame everybody else that, if they want to eat and gorge out on whatever, that's okay. Don't make a big scene about what you can and can't eat. That just makes you that guy, right? That ultra dieter, the, ego dieter or whatever. Don't be that person. Just do it for yourself and choose. You can quietly choose the meal you want and slip through the cultural norms without, challenging everyone else's belief about food. I mean, we all have our own problems and our own attitudes about things, challenges. There's no reason to cause more drama by stirring that up amongst everybody else. Nobody wants that. And it just creates more friction for you. Again, view the holidays from a position of love, compassion for everyone that's there. Think of this time as an opportunity that you can flex some of the new habits. You can negotiate this big smorgasbord of food, and you can make choices, and maybe you have a little bit more knowledge about nutrition, where you can say, hey, that's a starch. It's got a lot of starch. I think I'm gonna stay away from that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get a little of that. Oh, this has got some good fats in it. You're shaping that meal the same way you would shape a meal for the Killing Diabetes program. And it doesn't have to be dramatically different than any other day, other than you have typically a wider choice of things to eat. And certainly if you decide you want to have something starchy or sugary, do it, but just monitor your sugars and make sure that you're not making yourself feel ill with things you don't normally eat. I think these are all keys for this time frame. Don't let go of negative emotions about food. Let go of, if you feel that you want to have something, let go of that. Don't be negative with yourself when it comes to this time of year. I'm finding that I wanted to talk about this, and we really haven't had a talk with the Killing Diabetes program much in our monthly meetings about the kind of emotional aspect of eating, but it's really a big part of it. And I think you're going to see it now that we've talked about it. You're going to see more of this in your day-to-day life. You're going to notice it more, but it's really obvious during the holiday timeframe. So I'm going to end my little chat and there, but I am willing to take your questions for as long as necessary. And I did see one pop across. Let me pull it back up here. Yeah, absolutely. Eric, you asked, can you ask questions? Feel free, shoot away. You can either unmute and ask the question, or you can text it and I'll just sort of read it off there. So either way. And anyone else, feel free to chat, pop a question in, or unmute yourself and ask away.
Hey, I'm unmuted. How's my audio? Is it? I'm at a coffee shop right now. Is it okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So you know me. I'm looking for my strategy to get it all on Thanksgiving. And as you know, so I'm type 2 diabetic. I'm on Synjardy, but I do have some backup long-lasting insulin for
Yeah.
sometimes when I travel or if I'm backpacking. And I really limit the use of that. Now, my intention is to use some of that tomorrow, and I don't know enough about insulin to necessarily use it correctly. And I know, Dr. Bill, you're going to kill me, but it's going to happen. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
So should I use is there like a fast acting? So my goal is to maintain my blood sugar all day, regardless of what I eat. The long lasting insulin, I understand that is something that's in my body and is going to kind of slowly regulate over time. Is there like a fast acting where I can check my blood sugar a couple hours after the meal and bring it right down to where I want?
Yes, we could do that. That can't. So the general answer is yes. There are what they call ultra short acting insulins that you could do that. You also, depending on what your average sugars have been running, you also could took a low dose of the longer acting insulin, and that will curb that over time. Probably for what I know you're prepping yourself to do is that probably the shorter acting insulin with a small sliding scale with it will probably be the best choice. And we can, if you want, we can chat offline about that, and I can give you specifics and about how we can handle that. But generally, and I kind of knew this question was going to come up, and what it is the idea of like, well, what happens if my sugar does go too high? Well, what I don't want people to do, and Eric, this would apply to you too. Don't take extra Jardiance or whatever. Don't start doubling medications. Okay, as far as I'm not talking about insulin, I'm talking about oral medications. Oral medications are a different animal. Sometimes people just think, oh, I'm going to pop an extra one, or like I'll just take 3 today because it's Thanksgiving or whatever. Don't do that with the oral meds. They have too many side effects to do that. Insulin is meant to be titrated. So we can titrate that one. So I'm happy to, go through that with you and do that. If you have the long acting, a smidget dose of long acting, if you're getting ready to crush it and have, everything and just partake in everything, then the reality is, a very low dose of a long acting insulin could be started you could dose that in the morning. Just make sure that you've started to eat, check your sugars. I think you have the long acting, or you have the continuous glucose monitoring, right?
Yeah, the Libre sensor, which has been that's made so much difference. And I just threw this in the chat section too. Like I'm really looking at the insulin like a top rope when I'm climbing. It's fall, and when I fall only, and there's an ethic in climbing, like, well, don't grab the rope and use it to pull yourself up. So that's how I think about it. So I'm just looking for the accidents. And I think everybody's psychology would be different, but for me, it relieves a lot of the guilt and the shame for blowing it on my blood sugar, but it's doing it in a way where I also hopefully, and that's why I depend on you, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully I do it in a way where it doesn't become a crutch or a dependency.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point, because the insulin, everyone that's done this class understands that insulin sort of is the problem for a lot of folks. But there are situations where like, for instance, you might need to take some insulin, because the reality is if you eat something because you had to, you're on a backpacking trip, you're eating the, 80% carbohydrate pre-packaged meals and stuff, those are going to spike your sugar. And we don't want you to be sick. Because even though I talk a lot about we want to lower insulin, we don't want you on insulin, the reality is the reason insulin exists is because if your sugar is too high, you can become toxic from that. The sugar alone will dehydrate your body. When you start getting above 300, 400, things like that, when you start getting in those ranges, the body naturally becomes a little bit more dehydrated. And then you start to run into this vicious cycle of acidosis and a complication that can be very deadly for people. So I like that analogy you used about the top rope. That's a climbing term, but it's that safety rope that, like, I don't want to see you with a number like that. And it's possible, and what you're describing and what I know about your situation is it might be better that you have that short acting insulin, because if you're not using the long acting routinely, which is good, you don't want to have to use it. If your numbers are good most of the time because you manage your diet and your lifestyle, great. But if you do have moments where you see some spikes high, I do think that is a reasonable strategy to use. So we'll definitely, let's briefly talk offline about that, and I'll get you set up for if you need that. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Got another question here. Does taking digestive enzymes with meals help regulate insulin? Well, I would say digestive enzymes will improve in digestion generally. Most digestive enzymes are made with hydrochloric acid. They're also made with papain, amylase, lipase, all the pancreatic enzymes that help you break down fats and proteins better. So they definitely improve digestion and avoid maldigestion, bloating, gassy, things like that. As far as whether they'll lower your insulin, probably, I'm guessing not. I think that's going to be more driven directly by what you consume, because the most likely thing to spike insulin is going to be a high glycemic index starchy food. So that's going to be, sugar, obviously top of the list. It could be alcohol and sodas. It can be starchy foods like potatoes or tubers and foods that are very dense and sugary carbohydrate. That's going to be most likely to spike those. So I don't think the digestive enzyme it's definitely not a bad idea, especially if you're going to have a larger meal than you typically eat. It's probably not going to help you regulate insulin necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What else? Anybody got anything else? Okay. All right. So like I've always done on these, I did record this. So if you came in late, the first half of my ramblings on, kind of diet and holiday season, stuff like that, are at the beginning. And if you missed any of that, I'll try to post this one later this afternoon. It takes me a little bit to move the video around and stuff, but I'll go ahead and post it back in the Health Network so you have access to it. And also for anyone that missed this, because it is holiday season, I'll leave it there so you can watch it anytime. If you do think about more questions, go ahead and just forward them to me through the Health Network inside our little tribe there for the Killing Diabetes program, and happy to answer them there. So you always have access. You can always ask questions, but I always like these live events because we get good questions like we did today.
Hey, Dr. Curtis.
Yes, sir.
Hey, one more.
Yeah.
One Thanksgiving I was at, I think it was another doctor, but he had mentioned pre-eating, or I think he made a post before going to Thanksgiving dinner at my house.
Mm-hmm.
About pre-eating. Any thoughts on that? And his philosophy was, hey, you never know what people are going to be serving, so eat healthy right before you show up. Pre-gaming. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a strategy. I mean, it's. I think that most of the gatherings, I'm just thinking back to my own Thanksgivings. There are so many things there at most of these bigger gatherings that the reality is you'll have a choice. There's going to be a protein. There's going to be something that's got good fats. There's going to be probably 3 or 4 different types of vegetables. You're going to have choices and lots of temptations too, for that matter, for things that you would not normally eat. Pre-eating is a strategy. I mean, I've heard people do that. Just like they're taking it off the plate of their host, meaning they're not relying on their host. If they know that the options might be limited, if you know that your options are going to be limited, maybe that is a good idea. Just kind of pre-eat so that you can have a polite small meal. You're not going to feel like you're starving. You get to just eat whatever. I think that's an interesting strategy. It could work for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any other questions? Awesome. Well, I guess I'll close out. Eric, if you want to stand by right at the end here as we close everyone out, I can cover the rest of that with you. Okay.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. Take care, everybody.